Hi, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the Reader's Notebook for grades 2 through 4 and talk about a little tips for utilizing these notebooks in your classroom. First quick tip is to always have a teacher version that you are writing in and modeling for your students so that the way that you want them to set up their notebooks and the formatting of how they record in here is the way that you want them, and you can model that for them. This notebook has 4 tabs in it, and I'm going to go through each tab briefly. You can have your students decorate the front cover if you'd like, put their name, grade, and school that they go to. The inside front cover, every space is utilized for these readers' notebooks, which is fantastic. So on the inside front cover, you have the guidelines for a reader's workshop that you can review with your students. Something you can also do is add anything extra that you would like your students to know about your reader's workshop, about your literacy block. The first tab is for the reading list. Now, I would always, with my students, kind of give them a reading challenge. And for my third graders, we would do a 40-book challenge. So I would challenge them that by the end of the school year, they would have read 40 books. And then we would have split it up by genre and book type. That way, they're not reading 40 of the same type of books. So that kind of is set up here. Notice how there's a genre or type. And you can tell students, okay, this is how many of these books that you should read to meet the 40-book challenge, and so on and so forth. And then they can tally it up as they're reading books and see how they're doing with the challenge. Now, you don't have to do a 40-book challenge. However, you can have students make a goal for themselves of how many books they'd like to read, and then they can kind of split that up and do some math and language arts for you. Then on the back side of this, something that's really cool is it has a description of the different genres and the genre code that is used in the reader's notebook. And then the next page starts where they can list the books that they're reading. They put the, now this is again up to you how you want to format it, but this says numbers, so that's the book number that they've read. They put the title of the book, the author of the book. Now, especially with second and third graders, they may need to use 2 lines to record on this because let's be honest, sometimes our handwriting is a little bit larger than ours. They write the genre code here if they completed the book. Now, something that I taught my students is about abandoning books, and that was a whole mini lesson. And abandoning a book means, stopping reading a book because you're no longer interested in it. And we talked about when that's appropriate and when that's not appropriate. And that was a whole mini lesson in itself about abandoning books. So again, you can utilize this section however fits the needs of your class, but those were just some tips from how I would use it. The next section is the choosing books section. And again, every page in this book is very full of information. So the front cover talks about how to choose books, and again, this could be a whole mini lesson talking about how to choose good fit books, and you can of course add anything that you feel like pertains to your class. And then the back side, which I love, talks about how to give a book talk, and again, this would be a whole mini lesson, and we would practice giving book talks, and students would record their book talks. Our 5th graders are doing that in libraries, so that's fantastic. Just a cute idea to get students talking about books. And then this is a place for them to record books that they're interested in reading. So maybe, at library, Miss Arp talked about a book that they're really interested in. So they go back and they write down the book that they're interested in reading, or maybe they see a friend that's reading a book that they're really interested in. They can add that to their list. Or maybe a book was talked about during book talks on morning announcements with Miss Reichert or the 5th graders, and they want to add that to their reading list. The third section is for mini lesson notes, and it talks about expectations for mini lesson notes and ways that it can be used. And then I really like how they have graphic organizers set up. And isn't this awesome? It kind of reminds you a little bit of some of those TEI questions from the SOLs. So these graphic organizers are in here, and students can refer to them during note-taking time. It has blank pages so that students can post their and glue their notes in here. A lot of times I might hand out the graphic organizer and they glue it in and they fill it out during interactive read aloud time or mini lesson time, or as the year went on, then they would start drawing their own graphic organizers based on the ones that I had taught them how to use. There's just so many ways you can use this section. They can just jot down definitions of different types of strategies, or they can jot down tips from the mini lessons. Again, there's just a plethora of ways that you can utilize this section. The last section is writing about reading. And this is where they record their reflections on books that they've read. There's different types of ways that you could write, and you can kind of go over this with your students. I would do a mini lesson for each one of these, and maybe these are not the ways that you would like your students to reflect on their writing. Maybe you prefer to do a different format, and that's completely fine. But I'm pretty sure these align with the Reading Mini Lessons book. And then it includes some guidelines for students on what they should include when they're writing about their reading. And again, you can add or take away from this based on your expectations for students. It has a letter format to help students kind of remember what does a letter look like if you'd like your students to write you a letter about the books that they're reading. It has suggestions for things that they could write about, which goes on to the back. But some things that I would have my students do is, again, they might write a letter to me. Maybe they'd fill out a graphic organizer based on the book that they're reading independently. Sometimes I'd have them put their stop and jot sticky notes in here, and I'd collect them and look at them. Again, there's just a plethora of many different ways that you could utilize the writing about reading, but the purpose of this section is for them to tell you about what they are personally reading and how they're applying the reading strategies that you are teaching them. The last page of this notebook, the back and side front cover, is our guidelines on how to discuss books. So when and if you start book clubs with your students, you can have a whole mini lesson on some expectations that you may have for them. Thank you so much for watching this video and doing a quick little walkthrough of your new readers' notebooks. Let me know if you need any help.